Rachael Willment, how's it going?
Hello, thank you for having me.
No problem. Thanks very much for coming on. Uh, I know we have a lot to talk about. Um, there are some things going on in the political landscape regarding the entertainment industry and music industry, which I'm really interested to speak about. And I know you're itching to have that discussion as well. But also, I'm super interested in um, the life of a performer in general, not necessarily just vocalists, but kind of the lifestyle of being on the road and being in such a career where you're always putting yourself on the line, and performing for others, which is very different to most careers. For those that don't know you, Rachael, who is Rachael Willment?
Well, first of all, I'll just tell you right now that touring and being on the road is not as exciting as everyone thinks it is. I'm going to first of all tell you how little sleep I
Mm.
get. I've been singing and training for about 20 years now to get to the standard of a professional musician. I tour with not right now, obviously, with two different theatre shows. One that you've been to, I think,
Yes,
our ballad show. You've been to see that one.
it was amazing.
So I do that, and I do UK Pink Floyd Experience. I've just got to plug all of the bands now. I've been told to get it out of the way. I also teach singing, and I do just whatever freelance work I can get. That's pretty much how it works. You just whore yourself out to everyone, and then whatever comes up, you take it. But obviously, there's not much of that going on right now because everything has stopped. But we can get into that when the time comes.
Yes, I don't know, should we start with that or end with that?
I mean, we can get into it now if you want.
Do it. Let's get out of our system. So I've recently seen, I think the first time I had noticed that this politician, is it Rishi Sunak or
Rishi Sunak,
something?
that's the one.
The Chancellor of the Exchequer, whatever the hell that means. Essentially, from what I've seen, there's a career politician telling people in the music industry to now go get a proper job. I mean, that's kind of how I took it. What's your take on it?
That's how I took it as well. I think that's how a lot of us took it. I mean, obviously it was worded, we should retrain and look for other work, but there's quite a few issues that we can take with it. And that is, as an industry, I feel like we've kind of always been at the bottom of the pile in terms of people in other industries understanding what we do, how much we do, and how much training does go into it. I think obviously there's other people in other industries that are out of work but haven't been told these things the way that we have. And obviously his comment has been retracted, and ITV have said that it was taken out of context, but you just believe what you want to believe, really. I think none of us have believed it, but yeah, so that kind of didn't really help. I think the other issue is that it didn't help. There was nothing that we could take from that didn't take away from how insulting it was or how ignorant it was. And it just didn't help. We're all doing what we can. We're all looking for work, and we're all trying to make money so that we can still pay the bills and stuff, because obviously the bills haven't been frozen, but we're not allowed to.
I don't imagine, sorry for interrupting, I don't imagine that there are many like performers and singers and vocalists and band members who are on payee to have qualified for the furlough scheme either. So I imagine as a overall community of people in your industry aren't even getting any help from anywhere else either, because they're not tied into a certain company or necessarily a label which would qualify for that level of financial support that a lot of people did.
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously the self-employment support scheme grant, which is like the longest title ever, which they just made so much complicated, and a lot of people fell through the cracks with that. There were a lot of points to the criteria that they didn't meet, so it was great that they offered that up, but then a lot of people didn't qualify for it anyway, like you said. So it just it was a bit like, oh, thanks.
So in terms of ITV retracting the comments and that it was taken out of context, it's all well and good doing that. However, your industry hasn't been allowed to gradually open back up in any form or any way. So I mean that kind of still leans to the idea that they want you to do something else. I mean it's a very believable quote considering on how the landscape of things that are allowed and things that aren't. And of course the next big thing for people like yourself in your industry is to start looking and blame what you can and see who's responsible for this lack of support for you guys. And when you see pubs being allowed to open and certain gatherings in very kind of not such high vibe situations, I mean, you know, watching people perform and live music and stuff, it's such a rewarding, entertaining, kind of emotion elevating experience versus, you know, going to the pub and poisoning yourself. I mean, that's just my opinion on it, but one's okay and one's not, and all that's breeding is some divide and stress and arguments and anger and some strongly held opinions which are, you know, forcing people to fall out and argue. Why is it, do you think, that it's okay to go to the pub but it's not okay to go to watch somebody sing on stage? Has there been an explanation for this yet?
I don't really know, to be honest, because I think you can clearly see that, you know, art and culture and everything that kind of comes under that umbrella adds to an improved quality of life. It contributes in so many ways. There's like music therapy is a thing that exists because music helps people.
Yeah.
So it is interesting that that side of it is being ignored. And I think from a very basic level, I can understand that, you know, in order to go and see live music or to go and see a show, you're going to be near lots of people in an enclosed space, which is not a good idea right now. I understand that. But then, like you said, going to the pub on like a Saturday night where it's going to be difficult to enforce the rules. And we saw like all the pictures when the pubs first reopened, there were like pictures of Soho and stuff like that, where it was just rammed.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know, some of us have been out of a job since March, but it's okay because everyone can go out and get smashed.
Also, I mean, no one's ever got drunk and broke the rules, right? It's not like alcohol makes people disobedient in any way. I mean, that's the next thing. I mean, how do you tell? I'm sure you'll go into the pub having not drunk yet with the idea of following the rules. You have a few drinks and then all of it goes out the window anyway. I think
exactly.
I kind of feel like we're all adult enough to be able to go to, you know, a concert or a gig or a show and be able to follow the rules, you know, because you're having a good time. I kind of feel like asking pub goers to kind of adhere to these social distancing measures or whatever it is they're called whilst intoxicated, and also, you know, everyone's been under lockdown for a while, and now it's like keeping a kid out of a sweet shop and then you've gone bang, pubs are open. People are going to go crazy. So I still don't really see the thinking or the sense behind the music industry not being allowed to open. If you were in charge, Rachel, and you were in charge, you were sat on in Westminster, and you could paint a picture, you could propose a way in which the music industry and entertainment industry can reopen, how would you do it? What would you say the answer is right now?
I think that right now, given the state of the things, given the fact that we're facing a potential second lockdown, big live events the way that they were before are not a good idea. I agree with that, and in my head that makes sense. I think the issue is that a lot of people are out of work and they're not being given the financial support that other people might have been given. That, for me, that's the issue. I think even before Corona and everything else, that, I mean, no, people don't understand or value what we do for a living. And I think that kind of comes, to be fair, you're not really going to understand what it's like to get the buzz from being on stage in front of people and doing the thing that you've trained to be really good at, unless you've experienced it. I understand that. But I don't really understand, the thing that I don't understand is the financial side of it, and not because like maths is not my strong point, but because if I was to sum up the government that we have right now in a non-offensive way, I would say...
No, give me the offensive version.
I would say that finances are quite near the top of the list in terms of things that they care about. But then when you go into the stats and stuff, you can see that as an industry, we contributed like 10 billion to our economy last year. And it's just not, people aren't talking about it anymore. So I don't think that the issue is when can we reopen. The issue is that we're not being given any details and we're not being given any financial support right now. That's what I think.
So you feel that, you know, we don't really need to have a look at a path to reopening the music industry. You guys would prefer to just be supported financially until there's a quite an evident, obvious way of being, you know, would you rather you guys were supported financially now, or that you were just allowed to put on events and actually do what you guys love to do?
I think it would be nice to have a deadline. It would be nice to have some idea of when things might shift and when we might be able to start doing events again. That would be great. It would be nice to just have something so that we can, because they did this thing in the summer. They were like, oh yeah, theatres are going to open this weekend. You can do outdoor performances. And everyone was like, we need to rehearse. We can't put on a show in 24 hours.
Yeah.
So it's just like unhelpful stuff like that, where they just throw out dates because they think it's going to help. It's not going to help. We need time to prepare. So having the time to prepare with the knowledge of when a show might be able to go on would be really good. And you know, one of the bands I work with, we did a drive-in event in August, and it was a bit weird. I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit strange, but it was doable. We did it, and if the government backed it instead of allowing it and then cancelling it, which a lot of those gigs did happen and then got pulled at the last minute, that would be much more helpful for us, because then we can plan for an event, do the event, get paid for the event, and then everything's kind of fine for now. But there's all these like U-turns and then changing their minds and not giving us anything to work with, not supporting people, and then saying, oh, you should just retrain and do something else. It's not, it doesn't help. And for me personally, working in this industry, mental health is a big thing. And I think probably a lot of other people are feeling the way that I've felt for the last few. They probably haven't been crying every other day like I am, because I'm very emotional. But I think a lot of people are going to be struggling with that aspect, which makes everything more stressful. Mental health is always a delicate subject anyway, but then within this industry, it's like heightened all the time.
Well, I mean, I imagine a lot of coping mechanisms for a lot of people in your industry is the performing, you know, where they can freely express themselves and find a sense of self within their music and their performance. And of course, now that coping mechanism has been taken away quite abruptly as well. And there's no sign of it coming back. It's the uncertainty, which is obviously far more stressful than the lack of being able to do your job, I imagine. You mentioned that, you know, there's this lack of overall respect for the industry. And I do obviously agree with you. I mean, you know, the music and entertainment industry in terms of live music has been ignored and hasn't been considered at all in any plans or any vision for, you know, opening back the economy, as they keep saying. What do you reckon has caused that kind of attitude towards the music industry? I have a theory, but I'm interested to hear what yours is.
I think that attitude is not linked to the pandemic. I think that has been around before that. I've done gigs before where I've come off stage after like 3 hours and had someone come up to me and ask me what I do for a living. I think a lot of people think that it's a hobby, and it's not a hobby. This is my life. So I think that has kind of always been there. I mean, look, you know, not everyone is like that. Lots of people support and appreciate the music industry, and people know how much they're positively impacted by live music, for example. But it's, you know, it's always been there. I do firmly believe that, which is, it doesn't really help.
I believe that, I think I think we're of similar age. And if we look at what we were growing up with on the television, countless amounts of talent shows, you know, Britain's Got Talent.
Are you trying to get me started on the X
Factors? Well, you know, but here's my 2 cents on it, right? I kind of feel those programs taught the general public that it's something you either have or you haven't, and that you don't have to work to be able to sing or perform. because the way in which these shows found talent were just people off the street. It appeared like they were people that were off the street that never worked or trained to be able to do what they'd done well. So to me, from what I can see, it kind of looks like that millions of people watching these shows were exposed to a version of performers and entertainers and vocalists, people who sing, as just normal people who just have this gift that they didn't have to work. It wasn't a big effort, because it was always sensationalized of, I don't know, Claire, oh, she works in a fishmongers, and that was played down, and oh, she has this amazing voice. Now all of a sudden she's a singer. And I kind of feel that had an awful lot to do with painting a picture of the industry where it didn't look like people had to work hard and refine their craft like you did. I'm not sure what you think of that.
I totally agree with you. If you want me to get started on X Factor, that's been ready to go for years. I'm ready. So
do it. Let's get sassy. Sass mode 100.
I think, TV talent shows have a lot to answer for, because people forget that at the end of the day, they are TV shows. So a lot of stuff is scripted. A lot of things are set up to get a certain response from people. If we look at the X Factor in particular, when you get to, well, I guess they're all live shows now because they all audition in front of a live audience, don't they? I don't know, I don't watch the X Factor. But obviously, people seem to be, as an example, conditioned to clap as soon as they hear a key change. And it doesn't even matter if the key change is flat when people go up to the next note, for example. People will just hear that key change and they'll just clap and applaud for it. And as a result of that, I think there's this kind of, people have almost been conditioned to celebrate mediocrity, and that makes me sound so arrogant. I don't mean it.
No, I completely agree.
I'm not trying to go after anyone that has I auditioned for X Factor when I was like 14 and I didn't know any better, and I would never do it again. But I do think that everyone's standard is like lower than it was before TV talent shows existed.
I agree. Well, I mean, you only have to look at music now and music, then. I mean, music was amazing. Seriously. I mean, you look at even 70s, 80s and 90s. Wow. And you look at kind of, not necessarily music, vocalists, singers, there's an overwhelming difference now in the metric of success for vocalists from 90s and before to now, and there's a clear indicator of a difference in ability to the difference of fame and success, and they're getting further and further apart. From what I can see, I'm not sure how much these talent shows, television shows had on that, but it certainly it kind of made, for me, I started getting bored of all of these, X Factor and Britain's Got Talent and American Idol and all of this stuff. But I also think it made me a bit bored of singing and hearing people sing, because it was kind of like, it's in your face all the time, 24/7. There's always a television show involving singers on round the clock all the time. When one ends, another one starts. Yeah. And I kind of feel like, I was really bored of the TV shows, but that just manifested in my brain as, you're also bored of singing because that's the bulk of the content that it's involved with. I don't watch TV now. I haven't watched anything for about a year, but I can definitely see how that would, as you mentioned, condition the general public on how to view an entire industry that they knew nothing about before. So now this is how they're going to view it for the rest of their lives until they start experiencing real live music. But they don't do that because it's too easy to get in the comfort of their own home, sit in front of a little mind control machine in the corner of their living room.
No, it's such a good point. I agree with all of the above. I think if we were to look at like popular music now, there are plenty of great singers that still exist. Like Jennifer Hudson, for example. She's phenomenal. But when you look at the charts and what sells, like, the average people are pushed to the front, or they're really good, but they're singing stuff that is going to sell and doesn't show off their voice,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they're really good, but that's not what people want to hear. So yeah, I totally agree. I think the longer we go without live music, but we still have Britain's Got Talent still on right now, isn't it? I think it's on right now. Stuff like that, that's what everyone tunes into, and then people expect that, and then they
Yeah.
settle for it. And I think it's a shame.
The current state of the music industry at the moment kind of sees, to me, it kind of looks like the way I see it is people are making even the biggest, the top artists are making far less now from the music itself, because the way in which we purchase music, or the lack of purchasing music nowadays, it's all streaming services, and I think a lot of musicians and artists are getting paid a lot less per song because of the way in which our technology is advanced. So of course they need to be marketable people. Their personas, their brands need to be marketable so they can make money elsewhere. So now it's no longer about the artist's skills. Now it's about their marketability. And of course, this strange kind of gang culture, thotty lifestyle, this very strange thing that's permeating through me and your generation. I don't know if it's our fault, Rachel, but it's a weird thing that's happening, where this gangster kind of against authority type thing that's happening, where you don't have to be a very, very good singer to succeed and hit the top of the charts. All you have to do is be able to sell stuff on social media and sell your brand and sell products and t-shirts and all this stuff, and then the music is just a byproduct. It just kind of looks like a window into the ability to be able to have the platform to sell this other bunch of shit for your label and these corporations that actually control the music industry now.
Yeah.
Now we can identify the problem, and I have a lot of people on this podcast who come on here with problems, and they love to vent, and they get out of their system. But then we're like, well, what needs to change? How do we go back to rechanging and reshaping the music industry so it celebrates raw talent first?
Yeah, I actually wanted to just go back to something that you mentioned just now about how like the overall package is more important than like the vocal technique, for example, because there was a few years ago, there was like a very common trend of singers cancelling half of their tours because they'd ruined their voices and didn't know how to look after it. But the problem with that is people who I teach will come to my lessons and say, oh, I want to sing like this singer. And I can see them doing all the technique that they shouldn't be doing. And that's because they've seen it and they want to copy it. But and I'm not going to name any names. I did that already. I'm not going to slag too many people off. But when you get these big singers that are selling out big arenas, but they don't have good technique and they cancel half their gigs, and it's fine because they're a lovely person or whatever, that feeds down. And then the next generation of singers come up with bad technique. And bad technique is quite dangerous when it comes to vocals because you will damage your voice. And there's no going back from that, really.
Did you see Miley Cyrus's podcast with Joe Rogan?
I did not. It's on my watch list.
It's incredible. And I had no interest in Miley Cyrus before. She was just someone I fancied on TV for a bit before that, as a young lad, not now. I'm a mature, responsible adult now. But it was an amazing, incredible conversation. But her voice is destroyed. Absolutely. She's on there like, hey, now again, my name's Miley Cyrus. And she goes into depth, and she describes about how there was no support for her when she was a kid, doing all this stuff, and then she was never sleeping, so that was killing her voice, and she was doing a bunch of substances as well, which didn't help. But nobody was around to help her look after her voice, because everyone she was working for, Disney and these big corporations, would just output, hit the road, make money, hit the road, make money. And that, that was the general consensus really then. Is there anything happening now? Do you know, in the music industry, any support for young artists?
I think what normally happens is, if we were talking about like the Disney Channel, a lot of singers that come off that or come up through that tend to like push themselves as far away from that image as they can, which will lead to like substance abuse and everything like that. Because it happened with Demi Lovato as well. She really struggled, and she's got a really, really good voice. She's got really good technique, but obviously substances do not help your voice. But she was obviously driven to that. But then as a result of that, she used her platform to really try and help people that might be going through the same thing, which is amazing. And that's exactly what you should use your platform for. But it shouldn't have to come to that, especially when we have people in the past like Janice and Jim Morrison and all these people in the 60s and 70s that did all of this. But we still have people now making the same mistakes as if they want to live that lifestyle or whatever. But there's no need for it. We should learn from that.
So how, I do understand how they, you know, a lot of big singers start getting into this crazy lifestyle, especially if you start conditioning yourself to these huge dopamine hits, you know, when on stage. And, you know, I mean, you've been on stage in front of hundreds and thousands of people, right? Not hundreds of thousands, either 100s or thousands of people, right? And to kind of multiply that and be on stage in front of 30 to 80,000 people in like Wembley Stadium or something, I could never imagine what it feels like to draw all of that energy from a crowd that big and being this huge, massive superstar. And then the gig's over and, you know, you're not going to sleep. No way. And, you know, you've got a bunch of yes men around you and you got, you know, you got your hype people and people want to party and people want to do some crazy stuff. And the worst part about that is that the fans, the kids watching these artists start emulating that behavior and start trying to live their lives by the way in which these artists do, because that's what's cool. They're the role models, right? That's how herd behavior works. And of course, not to say there aren't some really great influences in the industry. I mean, of course there are, but you very rarely see that. You very rarely see the good behavior out in the public because it's not profitable. It's not exciting. It doesn't sell news stories. It doesn't get clicks. You know, it doesn't sell newspapers. But I'm really interested in fixing, or at least being part of the conversation on fixing how our children and how the generations before us can start being influenced better, where the ability for artists to make money is no longer the metric of a successful performer. But I have no idea how that can be a thing unless money's no longer involved, which I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, I think money is unfortunately always going to be at the forefront of especially mainstream music, because that, like you said, is like such a big driving force of what is going to be produced and what's going to be sold to the public and stuff like that. And then obviously you've got the press, which they'll only pounce on negative stories. So if you have people in the public eye who do charity work and stuff like that, that's not going to make it into a news article because people don't want to read about it. Because people thrive on like other celebrities' failures and stuff like that. So I think it's a good question. I wouldn't really know how to fix it. I think talking about stuff more is always the way, but at the moment, there's the music industry in general almost isn't being talked about enough. Even though if you go on social media, it's everywhere and you see all of these musicians posting about it and just saying, you know, this is my livelihood and this is my life and this is my identity. There are still people in the world that don't know what's going on. I saw a post on Facebook the other day, which was a video of a protest in Spain. It wasn't really a protest. It was lots of like lighting and sound engineers who were all socially distanced in like neat lines like that. And then they had an air siren going off and they just stood there with their equipment. But the video went viral and got loads of views and stuff. So it did its job. There are people in the comments going, oh, what's this about? And that made me really sad because there are still people that don't realize how much this industry is on its knees right now. And that's the biggest problem, that people just aren't talking about it enough.
And more importantly, what people need to understand is when an industry is on its knees, that means there are a bunch of individual people on its knees. I mean, an industry is a fallacy. It doesn't really exist. An industry is just made up of a bunch of people doing the same thing. And that just creates a community of people in the same profession. When an industry is on its knees, it means a bunch of people are fucking struggling. And that's where people need to disconnect themselves from the profession and just think about the people. And I know it sounds very kind of, very Beatles of me to say that, but like that's exactly what it is. And if people had a little bit more compassion, that not everybody's the same as you, not everybody does the same thing, not everyone's into the same things, but there are millions of people, millions of performers and vocalists and singers who are passionate about what they do and have no platform to do it, and more importantly have no way of paying their bills from doing it. I mean, you can do free gigs. I mean, I imagine you can busk and risk that, risk stuff like that, but people want to get back to work. And for the mainstream narrative to start piling out stuff like you need to retrain and get a different job or get a new skill really shouldn't be the answer to a community of people, an industry of which is now struggling due to rules that are forced on us. I mean, whether or not we agree with them or not, I mean, we can only agree with them to the extent of what information we're receiving. And so you are forced to stop working. That's just how it is. Yeah. And I'm not sure if you are now going to be forced to retrain and do something else, which of course you're not going to do that. I certainly bloody hope not. And so what's your plans now? You're only in control of your own situation. And of course, I imagine you want to keep singing. You want to let the music play. What's your plans now for the sort of, next few months?
I think for me, since about June, July, I pretty much just like crossed out the rest of this year. And I've been trying to plan the next year and just there's a couple of projects that I'm working on at the moment, but they all kind of involve live performance at some point. So I'm working on them, but don't really know like when they're going to kick in. But this is the best time for filming promo and doing all the recording and behind the scenes stuff because we've all got so much time to do it. So I've been recording a lot of stuff for this new thing that I'm doing next year. I'm very lucky that I've had almost all of my students throughout since March, which is not that many really, but they've been really loyal, and I've been really grateful to that. 'Cause obviously at one point we had to go switch to online lessons, and that was a change, but they all went with it and I appreciated it. So thank God. So I've been lucky in that sense, but then at the same time I know that at some point I'm going to have to look for something else, and I'll do what needs to be done, but it is going to be really hard, again, from a mental health perspective, to go from singing on a big stage in front of loads of people to like a 9 to 5. It's good because it's such a change. It's so different.
Of course. I completely agree.
That's not to say that like I think I'm too good for that job, but it's so different. And it's going to be a bit of a shock to the system, I think. I
mean, everything will feel like a step backwards if it's something you're not doing out of choice. It doesn't mean that, you think you're too good for something. It just means that it's not something that was your first choice. And, you're allowed to feel that way, of course. I mean, that's what makes you human. As long as you're pushing and still trying to do what it is you do best, which of course is singing, you're an incredible singer. I just want to go watch the Power Ballads show again. It was phenomenal. Holy shit, that show was incredible. Me and my friend Chris came down from London. And we didn't have much expectation. We didn't know, and that's the best. They're the best shows, right? When you just have no idea what you're about to see. And it was just incredible. And I remember the drive home, we were buzzing because it was such a vibe lifting evening. And because that's what music does, and music can also make you depressed too, because it's just a frequency at the end of the day. You listen to a sad song and try to have a fun conversation with a friend after. It's impossible. But, that's how amazing music can be. And I kind of feel like in times like this where, a lot of people are really stressed and anxious and unsure about the future, we need music more than ever. This is the time we need it. But the good news is we can all go to the pub and get pissed drunk for some reason.
We can, and cough on each other.
Well, yeah, and everyone starts kissing each other and doing things they shouldn't with people they shouldn't. That's what drink does. It doesn't make any sense, and it kind of feels like we're making some really weird decisions really quickly and that don't really benefit the people. And, I feel like opening up the music industry and the entertainment industry in real life, not the virtual world, not the television, that stuff's been holding people back for too long now. We need real people in the real world, in real life, performing real songs with real talent. And I really hope that comes back. I really do. I don't know how, but if important, influential people started thinking how and proposing that relatively aggressively, but tactfully, I think there's definitely a way it can be brought back for sure.
I think I agree with you that I think more authoritative people in the music industry should be doing stuff. I know that, Andrew Lloyd Webber has been doing a lot since fairly early into lockdown. He staged a whole socially distanced experiment show at the Palladium in London, and he's offered himself up to test any vaccines that come out, and he's been working hard to do that. He's a Tory, so he doesn't really have to do that. But there are more people in this industry at that level that should be speaking up more. I saw this really interesting thing because I know that the Britain's Got Talent final is this weekend, I think, and they've got a huge bill of musical theatre performers that, like, big names that are meant to be performing at it. And there's this campaign going around on social media asking them to just stand there and not perform, so that people can appreciate like what they could have had and what they're not getting. And because that's the kind of thing that we need to do to make an impact. It's all like, it's one thing to change a profile picture with a hashtag and kind of show that solidarity, but we need like proper action.
Yeah, at least you're not burning government buildings down. That sounds like a good option. I hope that happens. When's this final? I never turn the television on, but that's something I might have to keep an eye out for.
I saw it on social media. I think it's this weekend. I don't watch it, so
no. Are you sure? Oh, that's something I want to speak about. Have you ever heard about for those TV shows, X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, Idols, or whatever they are? Have you seen much about the contracts they make people sign and stuff that tie them into only being able to? Essentially, there was a bunch of stuff I've seen a long time ago. I say a long time ago, a couple of years ago, where you don't hear from many incredible artists who were on these shows and didn't win it. They don't go on to do anything. Apparently, they sign a contract where they're they're now like a part of that production company, and like already like they're signing to that label.
Right.
I could be chatting absolute shit. I'm definitely gonna have a look into it, because there were a few people that spoke out about it who were on the show.
I don't find it hard to believe what you're saying. I've just not heard it before. That's all.
yeah. So yeah, I wanna have a look into that. Hold on, you auditioned for X Factor when you were 14. I thought you had to be a certain age.
Well, at the time they just changed it so that you could be 14 and up, and I was 14. And I said to my dad, I was like, I want to do it, I want to audition. He was like, why? My dad's a musician, so like he was like, you don't need, this is ridiculous. But he went with me anyway, bless him. It was the worst experience of my life. But we went to the Emirates Stadium at the time, and we got there at 7 a.m. We queued all day because we had to stand in the background and film all the like X Factor stuff, stuff that you see that is like 5 minutes long. They literally make you film it all day. And then because we spent so long filming that, I didn't have time to see the judges individually. So we went into the actual stadium, and they sent members of the camera crew round, and 14-year-old me had to just stand up in front of everyone in the stadium and sing my verse to this guy that wasn't even paying attention. And then he went, no, and walked off.
Oh, wow. Is that how it is? Yikes, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, so that was great. And I think, to be honest, like from most of the auditions I've done, there has always been something that I could take away from it. But with that, it's just, I shouldn't have done it. And there was really nothing positive to take from it other than the fact that I shouldn't have done it. So, yeah, I would not recommend.
That's enough about those talent shows, I think. I hate them. They just feel like it's a 1 hour product, and it's not about the music, and it's not even about the people, is it? It's about the show. It's about the adverts that they can cram in between and how many viewers that they can get.
Yeah.
Now, something I'm really fascinating. I love singing. I sing all the time, constantly. I use it as a mood lifter. I just use it because I love to sing, and it's something in which I really value in terms of kind of learning and doing it, and personally, just around the house, not in front of people necessarily. How do you kind of deal with needing to be on top of your game, needing to be able to perform night in and night out, without burning out, without kind of running into a wall essentially, because it's
I'm so glad
tiring.
you asked me this. I'm so glad you asked me this because this is like one of my favorite things to talk about because a lot of students that come to me have no idea how to look after their voice, and that's
Mm.
as big as good technique. It's just as important. Um, I'm quite committed to my routine. I am the boring one when we go on tour with the Pink Floyd tribute that I work with, because everyone goes out and eats loads of like fatty foods and dairy and all this stuff. I'm like, no, I can't have any of that. Basically, my steamer goes everywhere with me. I steam twice a day. Sometimes in lockdown, I was steaming 3 times a day just because I was bored, and I was just like, this will work. This is fine. Yeah, I'm quite conscious about what I eat now. So I've limited my dairy intake, which was difficult because cheese. But I made it work. I made the sacrifice, it's fine. Water, obviously. I'm drinking lemon and ginger and honey right now, which is
Oh, so was I. That's what I was.
very good. Well done.
Yeah, I seen it in one of your vlogs of you on a cruise ship, and you had all of your stuff that you had, and
That
lemon.
was when I had to really kind of like figure out what my routine was, because I was doing like 3 hours a night every night, back to back
Wow.
on the ship.
Mm.
So I really like, you can't do that and then drink alcohol and not get enough sleep and stuff like that in between. You like
Mm.
everything that you do around the gig is just as important if you're gigging as much as that. So yeah, when we're on tour, I'll always find somewhere to nap, even if it's like the most uncomfortable place. I just feel like I'm just getting a little nap, so I'll just be ready to go on stage. Warming up and warming down, it seems like such a basic thing, but a lot of singers don't do it. You need to warm up before you sing.
Same as exercise, then, really.
Exactly the same. But there are a lot of singers that don't warm up, and they go, "Oh, my throat hurts." I'm like, so.
Is that because they've just gone from, their normal talking voice to just belting out a...
If you go from your normal talking voice to Celine Dion, it's not going to benefit you in the long run. You need to warm up.
Again, it's like going straight to heavy weights, right? The second you walk into the gym.
Exactly the same. And that's why I always try and tell my students, you have to treat it as a muscle. So it needs to be stretched before you do anything with it. And then it needs to be taken care of after you're done. And I think just kind of being super aware of how it feels is really important. At the start of this year, was it the start of this year? No, it was October last year. I got the Facebook memory and I was like, oh, good times. I lost my voice in the middle of a gig last year, which is the worst thing that can happen to a singer at a gig. And I had a big song in the second set, and I was like, I can't sing this tonight. I don't know what to do. And I had completely overworked myself, and I had a cold. And I think there's this expectation that singers can and should still sing when they have a cold, but really it's not a good idea, because if you have a head cold or a chest cold, it's all around this area. And you can do serious damage if you don't rest it when it needs to be rested. So that's the biggest thing that I've learned in the last year, I would say. Just like pay attention to it. And sometimes if you need to be a little bit of a diva, it's okay, because you still get to keep your voice at the end of it.
Exactly. And that's what's more important. I mean, if this was people watching the Olympics, these athletes would be applauded to stand down and be so brave to exit the competition because of their physical health. So why it should be any different for a performer, I have no idea. And again, maybe it's just that lack of respect you mentioned about the industry, probably has something to do with that. I'm also interested in the work that goes behind the scenes. If we're on about educating people to respect an industry, they need to have the information that goes along with it. So, for example, you mentioned that, you'd be on stage for 3 hours a night, for example, on the cruise ship, right? And a lot of people, a lot of closed-minded people who lack compassion would listen to that and go, oh, she only works for 3 hours a day. So a lot of people take it, and that's what breeds the disrespect for this type of industry. What is happening behind the scenes, building up to it, the before and after, the learning your lyrics and stuff? What is the before and after?
I'll tell you what's really difficult when the people that book you for the contract think that you're not doing anything during the day and they need you to do like a midday slot. And I'm just like, I went to bed at 4 and you're going to make me get up and sing or I'm ready to sing. So that's fun. But yeah, so I got on the ship with a repertoire of about 100 songs for that kind of contract. You've got to keep rotating because that was a ferry. So people go to and from, which means you're going to have the same people in the audience every other night. For me and a handful of singers, I will learn all of the words. There's no lyric sheets, there's no tablet on stage. That is honestly one of my pet hates. I think as a singer, I've got one thing to learn, and it's the lyrics, and I will learn it before I go on stage. Lots of singers don't do that. You'll see lots of singers, they'll have the lyrics in front of them, and I'm not annoyed about it at all. I'm not bitter about these other singers being allowed to do. I am. So that's a lot. Yeah, I mean, it takes a little while to learn the lyrics to 100 songs. I did that in the run-up. You've got to have all your equipment ready. You've got to make sure your equipment works and you know how to use it. It's not as complicated for me as a singer because I've only got a mic and a stand. It really annoys the guitarists when I turn up and like set up in 5 minutes and they've got to do loads of other stuff. But I can for me, the hardest thing that comes with singing on the ships, for example, is the hassle that you're going to get from certain members of the audience. I don't know if you saw, because you said that you saw my vlogs. When on the last contract I was on, I did receive some verbal abuse in the form of sexual assault while I was on stage.
Oh, yes, you did.
It's not the first time it's happened.
Oh, dear.
With my line of work, you're expected to dress a certain way. And it's not right and it shouldn't be allowed, but it's the way that it is. To be honest, it makes me feel better because it makes me feel like I've made an effort to be on stage. If I went on stage in just like jeans and trainers, I wouldn't feel like I was going to do a gig. So I'll make the effort. It's fine. But then people will say stuff which they shouldn't say and they'll be pissed. So you kind of got to like ignore it a little bit. But learning to deal with that and kind of know how far you can push it in terms of how assertive you are needs to stay in line with how professional you are at the job. Because you don't want to take it too far that people won't hire you again, but at the same time you don't want to be a doormat because you don't want to be a doormat. That's the biggest challenge for me as a singer, because I mean I kind of started off doing pub gigs and doing like the rowdy pubs, and that's where what you don't want to do at a pub gig is turn up and accidentally unplug the television that's showing the football, because then everyone hates you before you've even gone on stage. That was the first thing I did at the first pub gig I ever did.
Oh my God.
I've learned my lessons. I don't unplug television, so I let the drummer do that. It's fine. So yeah, sort of learning to deal with people in the audience who don't respect that you're doing a job, which again, they don't respect it. That's like the hardest part, I would say. But I don't really get it so much with theatre shows. I get it after the theatre show when people come to talk to you when you're stood outside and then they grab you for a picture and stuff. Really? Yeah. I mean, it's handy because my boyfriend is in both of those shows with me, so I just kind of like
MJB, I love you, man.
Yeah.
Your boyfriend, right, is incredible. He's just a babe. He is just like, I'm so lucky to have him as a friend. Every single time I spend time with him, he never has a bad word to say about anybody. He has all the gratitude in the world for everything he has and gets to do.
What annoying though? I've tried to get him to slag people off and he just won't do it.
No, he won't do it. He's too bloody nice. He's too nice. Even when he was talking about the crazy stuff that he with Israel and this, I don't want to go into it too much. Like, he's just still just so humble and nice, and What's it like, kind of being on the road with your partner? Because I imagine that adds a whole different element to it.
It does. I mean, I'm proud of both of us because we both. I mean, when I joined UK Pink Floyd Experience, that was when I met him, and he'd already been in that band for 11 years or whatever. And I kind of, I mean, I didn't. That wasn't my intention when I joined the band. Obviously, I wasn't like, okay, let's just see who's in the band and see what my options are. But I met him, and then I was like, okay, I want to do this in a way that is respectful to him because he was here first, and he should get to experience the band and not just have me there all the time. And also, I don't want us to be us in front of the rest of the band all the time. Everyone in the band should feel like they can talk to each individual person. So that is something that I consciously thought about when that all kind of came about. I mean, he's really chilled out all the time anyway. Like you said, he doesn't care about anything. It's fine.
If you were cycling as much as that crazy motherfucker does, I think we'd both be very chilled out as well.
I don't do it. He keeps trying to get me to do it. It's not going to happen.
Oh, you know, I bought a bike. He inspired me to buy a bike, and I think I've been on it like 4 times.
It has been really good having him, another musician, to talk to while all of this has been going on. Because, like I said earlier, I've been super emotional, and the amount of times I've called him up and then just cried for like ages. And he handles it so well, which I am really grateful for. So
he does. He's someone who's very good to go to with a problem and an issue, and he'll very quickly make you realize how simple and straightforward it is in the grand scheme of things. But there's nothing wrong with being emotional, especially in your line of work. If you have the ability to bring your emotion out whenever you want to, and you can strategically do that when you're performing, and then you're onto a winning show for sure.
I do generally do that. I found that I perform much better when I'm absolutely raging about something. Usually when my best performances happen, when I'm annoyed.
So you teach singing or vocal, what do you call it? Is you singing? Is that the right word technically for it? You teach singing, and because I watched a bunch of your diaries, your singing diary stuff, which is real fascinating, by the way. It's really interesting to see the process. And as someone who will definitely take lessons at some point in the near future, what would you say is the biggest mistake that people come to you for their first lesson, and not mistake, but the biggest thing that can be easily fixed for someone who's trying to sing?
I would say the biggest thing that people get hung up on is that they can't do something. I, as a singing teacher, am not going to give you something that's beyond your capabilities, but I am going to push you so that it's actually challenging and you get your money's worth. I have a lot of students that really struggle with self-confidence, which is not unusual to me because that's the reason I started having singing lessons. So I do kind of understand where people are at and I can help them with it. But I find that with singing, you have to be brave. Like, especially if you're singing in front of someone that you've never met, you have to just do it in the first lesson and get it out of your system. If you hold yourself back by being scared of what's going to come out, we're never going to know what's going to come out. And then it's impossible to like improve on it because I haven't heard it properly. So I would just say that people, if you're brave enough to book the singing lesson, you've already paid for it. Now you need to just like get your money's worth and go for it. Like you're paying me. I'm not going to judge you or laugh at you or anything like that. I'm going to make it so that we find things that work for you and you'll enjoy your lesson a lot more. And the enjoyment part is really important as well.
And I imagine that comes quick. The kind of the challenge of, putting yourself in a position where you need to not care about what someone thinks of you and getting past that. I imagine that once you get over it pretty quickly, I imagine. And I guess that will resonate with a lot of people who try to sing, is how confidence plays a big part of you being able to present your singing voice as accurately as you can. I remember I was in musical theatre group years ago, well, probably just over 10 years ago now, at university in Plymouth. And, I just liked it. I liked singing, and a friend of a friend said, like, come along and stuff, and I thought, wicked. And we'd done some really cool things. And then when I was at home, there was like a competition. I was on like social media and basically had to enter a video or something, a singing thing. I was like, I'll do it. That'd be cool. Every single time I hit the down record button and started to sing, I couldn't. it was just crap. And I'm like, hang on a minute. And that's when I first started to realize there is a fundamental thing going on where when I knew I had to do it, I couldn't. But when I'm around the house or in the shower, in the kitchen, or just cooking or cleaning or whatever, I could do it. I could sing. And so I imagined that the mental aspect of being able to get through the barrier of worrying or trying to predict how it's going to go, and just being in the moment and singing and performing and enjoying it, so let your emotions drive you instead of your logical monkey thinking brain. I imagine that makes a huge difference. But how do you teach that? Is it just a case of just do it? It's repetition. Just do it.
I think, well, firstly, but like, I still don't like recording myself. That never, that doesn't always get easier, to be honest.
Right.
When you know that you're recording yourself, there's going to be stress. So you just kind of learn to manage that, really. I think everyone gets used to it at different times. But with me and my students, I really think it's important that they take the little victories. So if they get through a whole song where the week before they could only do the first verse and then they freaked out and stopped, that's already like a huge milestone. So it's important to kind of know what your limitations are right now and what you can do to kind of just push it a little bit. And everyone works at a different pace. So there's no point in going, I want to be able to do this song perfectly in like 3 weeks, because you might not be at that point yet. And that's fine. So I think it can take a while. I started having lessons when I was 8. My parents put me them because I was shy and like had loads of stuff happen at school, and they were like, let's just get her singing lessons. I don't know what their thought process was. But it obviously worked. But it did take me a while, and it's still, like, sometimes now I still don't want to sing in front of people, because it depends on how you're feeling at the time. If you're feeling like you can do it, you can conquer anything, you're going to get a lot more done, and that's generally the best time to practice. If you're not really feeling it, then just don't practice. But I think it's important to remember that it's not going to happen overnight, and you should set yourself manageable goals and then go through them one at a time.
Yeah, of course, setting small targets. I mean, it's a sensible way to achieving something, for sure. And it also kind of, it helps you focus on enjoying the present moment. Because when you set all these individual, let's say, I don't know, I wanted to be able to sing, I know, an Ed Sheeran song or something, I could focus on just nailing the first verse or the chorus, or I can just get so obsessed with nailing the whole song in full, trying to predict how people are going to react once I do it properly. And if I'm just focused on that, then I'm going to lose sight of what's important in the moment. And I'm gradually starting to realize that with everything I do, to be honest. And I get a lot of people on the holy shit, not show, the podcast, God, on the podcast, who have achieved some crazy stuff, whether it's climbing Mount Everest or, being in the original Jamaican bobsled team. They all have the same ethos of just focus on the here and now, create some very small goals, some small achievements that eventually contribute to this bigger, overall goal that you're trying to achieve. And it sounds like it's the same thing for learning how to sing and perform.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one particular thing that a lot of people struggle with when they first start actively learning and practicing is singing with a backing track, because everyone's used to singing along with the original singer, and then once you put the backing track on, people freak out because they can only hear their own voice. So I always think, like, the sooner you can get into backing track territory and get used to it, you're already going to be like a good step ahead the way you were at the start. Backing tracks, just get used to the sound of your own voice. That's such a big thing.
The worst part for me with the whole backing track stuff is that for some reason they seem to be in a different key than the original song.
Yeah, some of them are, and also some of them are just really bad. So you kind of have to just get used to that and just focus on what you're doing. Yeah.
Can anybody learn to sing?
Definitely. Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay then, because that's what I always tell people, and I'm like, this could be. If you just went, nah, no, I'm like, shit.
I think anyone can learn to sing, and everyone can find benefits in it. So I think people shouldn't be afraid to give it a go. Unfortunately, there is this weird thing where people grow up having people tell them that they're bad and they should never do it, and that is going to be harmful, and that's going to set you back a lot.
Yeah.
But if you enjoy it and you feel like you want to commit to it, then just go for it, and you'll get somewhere.
Like anything in life, for sure. Which is why everyone in the music industry should not give up on it and just keep trying to push it through. And even if it means doing some really drastic stuff to get people to listen, that also needs to happen. It also needs to happen. I will book in some singing lessons with you soon. I need to figure out what it is that I need to do. I'm either around my baby or out moving around. But when I am back in the UK soon, I'll definitely we'll get it done.
Yeah,
I,
well,
I
I'm doing online stuff as well, so that'll
yeah.
be more convenient for you anyway.
Yes, no, of course, yeah. I mean, when I'm back in the UK, I've got my family elsewhere, so it will be much easier to do. And I don't know, I'm excited for it. You know, it's not something that it's also something I wanted to do. But when I left university, I left the musical theatre group and I was just didn't do anything. You know, I was learning a bit of the guitar and stuff like that. But it's definitely a part of me creatively and expressively that I'm really looking forward to doing. And it was always something that I see not as a weakness, because a lot of guys do. They see it as like, ugh, you know, it's this kind of non-important, fluffy thing that people do. And I think a lot of dudes see that as like an effeminate exercise, an effeminate thing to do, when it just isn't the case. Freely expressing yourself in the form of music is such a badass thing to do.
It is.
And I think if a lot of people recognize that, then they would do it. But there's a lot of egoic stuff surrounding the concept of singing that a lot of people shy away from doing it.
Do you think that links to how there's like a certain style of singing nowadays that feeds into the kind of like male singer-songwriter sort of boyish aspect of it? Because I've got that
Potentially.
quite a lot. If you look at like Ed Sheeran and people like that, it's quite like a tame, like soft approach to vocals. And then if you compare that to like like people in Deep Purple and stuff like that, it's very different, and that's like a man's voice, that kind of stuff. Do you think that
Potentially, yeah. But you know, we're in this really strange thing culturally where, you know, people are still hung up on like the alpha male and the beta male and the divide of what's a man and what's not a man. And I just the good thing, the exciting thing about the overly crazy leftist stuff that's going on is there's so much positivity in it, in terms of, you know, if a man can be a woman and woman can be a man and anyone can just be whoever they want to be, gradually there'll be a lot of, you know, really egoic, closed off guys that will eventually just be like, well, mother, I might just do what I want to do and express myself freely. It's starting to seem a bit normal. And I look forward to that being a thing. And I look forward to that being a thing in my life, because I was certainly one of those people who were like, oh, I'd love to sing. I'd love to learn to sing. You know, I'd love nothing more than to pick up my guitar. And we have a challenge. Me and my friends we do these things called Equanimity Challenges, where we basically are training ourselves to not give a shit about what people think of us, because that's one of the biggest things that hold people back from doing anything, whether it's going for a promotion at a job or asking a girl out on a date or, you know, climbing a mountain, whatever it is. Normally worrying about what other people think of you is the beginning of the end for whatever it is you're trying to achieve, especially if it's like a public facing thing. And one of those challenges that are on our list that I've been challenged to do is just go and busk somewhere, just do a couple of songs, you know, or like an open mic night or something. I'd love to do that. I'd love to set myself the challenge and have the feeling of being terrified and then just relieved at the end, and understand that actually it didn't really matter. The apprehension, trying to predict how it was going to go, whether I was going to fail. I mean, there is no failing. You just do it or you don't. And that's something I look forward to doing for sure. So
I think that's a really good idea. I think if you went outside and did one song, you'd feel amazing afterwards.
yeah, I'd probably want to do more, but I want to do it well. So look, we'll have some singing lessons. I got MJB, the one and only, to help me out on guitar, and we'll make it happen.
You can have a free lesson because you have me on your podcast.
Oh, amazing. Look at this. Woo. Okay, awesome. Well, look, Rachel, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a real good chat. Keep doing what you're doing. You're an incredibly talented singer. Very good at what you do. Obviously, extremely passionate. But it can't end there. You have to fight. You guys just have to keep pushing to do what you want to do. And it still has to be economically viable for everybody, because in a world where money controls everything, yet we have to play the game and we have to make it work for us. So I'm sure we'll be back. And hopefully once it's back, people will appreciate it more than ever. hopefully some of the respect will come back to the industry due to the lack of it, existing.
Yeah.
And hopefully people start taking off their earphones and start listening to real music in the real world very soon.
Yeah, we'll bring it back. Don't worry.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Bye, Aziz.